The Palace and the Pigeons by Tzvi Freeman. Once there was a king whose palace had been ransacked by wild hordes. For the wood and stone of the palace he had no tears, but for the crown jewels passed down for many generations, for these there was no consolation. The king gathered his wise men, but none could give counsel. The jewels had been scattered by those barbarian hordes throughout the land and throughout many other lands, the most precious of them taken across the seas to the farthest reaches of the globe. But the king had a daughter very dear to him, and in her wisdom she saw what needed to be done. So the king and his daughter trained many pigeons to return to the palace to recognize the crown jewels and carry them back on their journey. Each day they would release the pigeons in the pastures about the palace, and some would discover the jewels scattered about and return them to their home. And the king was glad and smiled to his daughter. Then the king's daughter sent them further away, and again they returned, carrying a few more of the jewels her father had lost. As far away as they were sent, they were hastily returned. But the most valuable jewels, those in the most distant lands and most hidden places, those jewels had not yet been recovered. The pigeons did not venture far enough to find them. They were too eager to return home. The king's daughter knew what must be done, but she could not tell her father, for it was too hard, too dangerous, too awful. But he looked her in the eyes, and he knew. And so he destroyed his palace once again, razing it to the ground, removing its every trace. When the pigeons attempted to return, they found nothing, no more than an empty pasture with scattered stones and smoldering wood. They were hungry for their food and sick for their home, until the most adventurous of the pigeons traveled far abroad and found other palaces, and in those palaces they found hidden the king's most precious jewels, and gathered them and polished them and kept them in their wings, and at night they cried, for they knew this was not their home, and now has come the time for them to all return. I can't explain to you everything meant by this story. If I could, what would I need a story for? I would just explain it to you without the story, but I can tell you some of the teachings that form its basis. For one, you need to know what the great Kabbalist Rabbi Yitzhak Luria, known as Ari HaKadosh, the Holy Lion, taught about our world. He taught that there is not a thing in this world that does not contain a holy spark. Even the greatest evil, even the harshest darkness that does everything it can to oppose its creator and deny any purpose or goodness in the world, even that contains a divine spark. And it needs that spark because without it, it would not be able to exist for even a moment. Why then is it evil? Because the spark it contains is so dim, so concealed, but its only way of expression is to be the opposite of what it truly is. So you might think that if that spark is so dim, it couldn't be a very important spark. Maybe God could do without it. But the Maggid of Masoret taught just the opposite, that it is the highest sparks that fall farthest from their source. So in places that are warm and friendly to holiness, there are going to be some warm and friendly sparks. But if you want the most powerful sparks, the sparks that talk about the real essence of God, then you need to deal with the places that are furthest from their source. As long as all these sparks are held hostage in things and places that don't know the real meaning of what they hold inside, the world is not fulfilled. That is how the Ari describes Torah and Jews. They are the way those sparks become reconnected to their source.